Thanks, Brae, for joining us again today. We've learned about your ADHD diagnosis, and I'm curious to hear about how you sought that evaluation initially for ADHD.
So actually, a coworker suggested I was having a hard time after um, we had two major hurricanes hit the Virgin Islands, and then I was also part of a project that I kind of lost, and it was a passion project of mine, and so I just was going through a rough time, and I couldn't focus. No matter how much I would sit down to my desk at work, I'm like, my mind was just going and I couldn't focus on my work. And the coworker had suggested, was like, from their own personal experience, was like, have you ever, gotten evaluated for ADHD? And so at the time I had been going to a therapist already. And so in one of our sessions, I asked her about it, and she was like, you had came to me and we were talking about your interpersonal relationships and your challenges with that. Um, but now that you say that, I think I do want to evaluate you to see if that's playing into some of this, challenges you're having in your interpersonal relationships. And so what she did was a screener, because I was also at the time planning a move to the States. I was in the Virgin Islands for 2 years after having lived in Belize and in New Orleans. And so I was now moving back to the States again for opportunity. Anyone who knows, living in the islands after major hurricanes, it's just not, it's a blessing to still be alive, but it's just not the most ideal conditions, right? And so I was moving for opportunities, and she didn't want to do the full evaluation. And then because it's so cumbersome, it's a lot on a person, and then me leave to the States. And so she said she would do the screener, and then if I needed to, I would get the full evaluation in the States. So long story short, I did, on the screener, I did, and Flavia, you can correct me if the terminology that I'm using isn't right, but I screen more for inattentive ADHD, and which is basically like an issue, like it's exactly what it sounds like, right? An issue with focus and paying attention to things or tasks.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. And I want to say a few more words here because I realize that we have not really spelled out ADHD for individuals as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And there are a couple different subtypes. The inattentive subtype that you're describing often goes unnoticed because there's not anything that somebody is doing to bring it to the attention of the adults around. So if an individual is always moving, getting out of their seat, or if an individual is disruptive in a classroom and throwing objects, or if an individual is just butting into a conversation and saying things out of turn, those things get easily noticed. But the quiet, more inattentive subtypes can get missed. And what the literature shows is that in Black girls, it's missed more often than in any other group. So what you've described about your symptoms, especially in college, definitely fits that subtype.
It was a relief because then I could use the strategies that I got from articles or even my therapist that would help me with, going about my day-to-day life, right? It is a little frustrating though, in terms of, access to healthcare and not being able, knowing that there's also something else in terms of medication that would even improve even more my, situation that I just don't have access to at this point.
Absolutely frustrating. I hear that from a lot of patients and people. And that's actually one of the reasons that we're doing this series, just to get more information out to individuals who might have access to information at their fingertips within their family or may not know where online to search. The whole goal is, especially for individuals from the Caribbean, to share tips and about mental health, especially as it relates to the transition to the United States. Now, you say that there are strategies that you use that are helpful to you that you've gotten from your own research or from reading about ADHD. Can you share a few of those strategies with us, please?
Yeah. So I'm gonna refer back to the challenges that I was having in college. So in terms of like losing my keys all the time, I created a space where everything has a space and everything goes in this space. I know like I've been following a lot of blogs. And so I know as I go through different phases of my life, like this would have to change according to that phase. So, like, a lot of women are the caretakers. So, when you end up having a house and you have a space, you know where everything goes, but everybody else sometimes doesn't necessarily know where everything goes. And so coming to you all the time for something can wear on you. And there are strategies and tips for that in terms of labeling and those kind of things. And you may even need to use labeling before you get to that point where you have a family and stuff. I don't necessarily need it now because every place that things exist makes sense for me, right? So I know exactly, and it's worked marvelously. I barely even have to take a long time looking for things anymore because it's exactly where it's supposed to be, you know? So that's one thing. I would say with the expressing myself, that is actually something that I feel like I am still kind of figuring out strategies too, but therapy has helped me a lot, right? Because I'm able to therapy and journaling has really helped me a lot. Journaling because a lot of times I'm just allowing the thoughts to live in my head and, trying to sort them in my head. And if I already have challenges organizing things, organizing it in my head is definitely not going to be a sufficient route for me to address it. So writing, journaling things out has been very, very helpful. And then that way I can like go back and read it and understand how I feel in moments, right? Meditation also helps me understand my feelings, understand when I'm feeling like sometimes there's like, I feel weird, like that's all I can describe it as. And so I'm like, okay, take a beat, take a moment, because there's something more there. And that taking that moment, taking that beat allows me to clearly see how I got to that point, and also allows me to identify like the different emotions that I'm feeling. And then again, like I said, I've been able to practice conversations with people that I'm about to have. I've been, able to dig deeper into my feelings about things as well. And so those have been amazing strategies to deal with communicating and expressing myself. In terms of studying, I'm not in college anymore. However, I mean, as in your profession, you want to like learn more about, you always want to be in a state of like learning, right? And so I've definitely narrowed down my learning style to visual. I've, figured out that I'm a visual person, and I also like tactile stuff, like working, so that helps me to remember things. Like I noticed that made a lot of sense, because in college, sometimes I used to type out, like I used to go back and type out outlines for exams, and I would remember like information like that. So, I mean, some of the things that I learned made sense retrospectively. Also, I have I have used the notes function on my phone like immensely. There's also this app called, well, it's not an app, but FocusMate. And when I used it, it was very helpful. I actually want to get back into using it, but I definitely would recommend anyone to use it, or a system like it. You can use a system like it. But so basically, FocusMate is where you can schedule time with someone else on this online platform, and during that time, you're only focusing on the goal that you have for that time. And so you're sitting in front, like Zoom. It's kind of like a Zoom. It's a video conference thing, and the other person is doing their work while you're doing their work. So it's basically like an accountability partner. And in college, you think about study groups, and you always have to figure out what works best for you. But the study groups kind of mirror like FocusMate in that arena. And you can also use FocusMate because it's for anyone. So that's another strategy that I would say is helpful in terms of organizing your time for studying. You can schedule the time. And that's also what keeps you accountable, right? It's because you have a scheduled time with someone that you have to go study with. And so it helps you to keep your commitment to yourself as well.
So I really loved what you said about therapy, because therapy is really meant to be a safe space where you can look at a situation from multiple angles, where you can develop competency to manage intense emotion and ability to speak about things in a way that you weren't able to before. It may also help you to view relationships differently based on the kind of the therapy, and even view yourself differently. And so I'm a big proponent of therapy. I love the application recommendation that you gave. There are two websites that I wanted to highlight: Attitude, ADDITUDE. It's a magazine, and it talks about the ADHD mind. And then another website called understood.org. And it really is just highlighting and talking about people who learn and think differently. So those are two websites that I'd recommend for individuals who are seeking additional resources. Thank you so much for your time, Brae, for sharing your story. And I personally believe it's made you into a better human being. And it's really directing some of what it is that you're doing in your career at this time. And it's going to be of benefit to so many people. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Flavia. It's been an honor. I love sharing my story, and it's part of something that I want to bring to my retreats as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we're in this together.